Hey, Bulls and Bears, welcome back to another episode, another report of economic financial news. Your money, my money, our money. And this is a big, important report today. There's national rent control coming down, coming from the top down, coming from Big Brother, coming out of the White House. By the way, it's January 25th. I'm recording this late at night. You might be watching this on the 26th. Either way, let's get into it. National rent control is going to be implemented from what I can see, and I'd like to get your feedback on this. Take a look. And Bulls and Bears, how long have we been warning and telling you that they're going to have to come out with some very big plans or very big steps in order to prevent the collapse, in order to prevent millions of people from becoming homeless? We see that cities, have expired these rent protections just periodically, since 2020. Now we still have several cities with that still in place, but we're talking about national. From Globus.com, White House moles tenant protections as local rent control push grows. And this comes at a time where rents are actually starting to come down. And yes, rents do typically drop a little bit during the winter months, starting in about October. They typically drop from month to month. But the drops that we saw at the end of 2022 and so far here in 2023 have been much bigger than we've seen over the past 5 years. So not just pre-pandemic, but going all the way back to about 2018. And so the market was starting to correct already, in my opinion, just by itself, just from natural forces, just from so many people not being able to afford these rents. And now with the economy, the job losses, the layoffs, the cost of living that people have to, you know, uh, balance into their budgets. And it makes it less affordable to pay these high rents. So what happens naturally is rents have to come down, and that's what's been happening. But now we've got this announcement out of the White House, and I've said here many times, I've said they're going to have to introduce a lot of different what we call rescue programs, protections for many different things. We saw what happened with the loans for college students, and it's going to go on and on and on. So we're going to see more top-down control. Will this help people? Well, in the end, no, I don't think it's gonna. I think it's going to do more harm than good. Look at all the other programs that were, federally backed from the top down nationally, and they didn't help. Look at the war on poverty going back many decades. Has poverty gotten any better? No, it's gotten much worse. Debt is way above where we've ever seen before throughout the history of this country. So the war on poverty failure. Look at the war on drugs. Federal war on drugs. And I sound like I'm on drugs here, throwing my words a little bit. The federal war on drugs failure. Do we see no more drug overdoses? No, it's actually worse than ever with all these overdoses, fentanyl, what have you. Typically, when they come in with big programs like this, it tends to make things worse. Look at FHA loans. It was meant to make housing more affordable by getting loans to people or making it easier for people with worse credit and lower down payments to get into homes. Did that make homes more affordable? No, it pushed up prices because more people were qualifying for homes. And you could say, well, that's a good thing. People need to buy homes. But when more people can buy something that they can't afford because of easy financing or easier financing or credit, it's just going to create a bubble. And that's what we see right now in housing and car prices and the cost of living. It's a bubble because of all this easy credit and debt that people can take on to buy things that they normally would not afford to buy. Right? So it's not rocket science. They're focusing on the demand side and not focusing on the supply side. What about making home ownership more affordable just in general? That would make rents come down because I own real estate and I see my costs are going up, the cost of maintenance, the cost of insurance. That's a big one. People that have HOAs, HOA fees are going up. Everything else is going up. The cost of taxes are going up, property taxes. The cost to fix something because of parts, a new water heater, air conditioning system, it's all up, 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 up. So the cost of home ownership keeps rising. And just think if we manufactured more things here in the United States, how much better this could be. And we go back to 2020 with hundreds of ships off the coast because we have to import so many things. We're an importer nation. What we do export is dollar-denominated debt for the most part. We're the world's largest debtor nation. and we can create dollars out of thin air and use those dollars to buy things that are imported from countries across the world. But you see, this whole thing is just making things more unaffordable as time goes on. So I think this will be a failure. There's a lot of different details in this, but this is just in the announcement phase. There's a lot of things and um, specifics yet to be hashed out by lawmakers, but we'll see how this goes. My guess is that it's going to make things more unaffordable. It's going to make things worse, just like everything else that we see, from the top down, that they come in and try to fix. But please let me know down in the comments what you think about this. And just to go over some of the bullet points that I read here, it's going to cap rents. We get to see what that's going to be. It could be different in each area. It's going to give renters more protections and more time against eviction filings. And I don't want anybody to lose their home, believe me. I don't want anyone to go out on the streets where it's cold and have to try to survive. But the problem is, the reason this is even happening is because costs are too high, rents are too high. So until you address the underlying issue, it's never going to get fixed. Look at student loans again. Was pausing student loans fixing the problem? Even if you eliminate the debt of students, is that going to fix the problem? No, it's just going to make it worse, because now colleges know they can charge as much as they want to. Why lower your price if you're a college when you know that students are going to get a loan and then get the loan forgiven? Or students will get a loan knowing they don't have to pay back the loan. So they're going to pay for the cost of this education, no matter what the cost is, no matter how high it goes, right? And the way I describe a lot of these things, they're Band-Aids on a broken leg. It doesn't actually fix the problem, right? Another thing you could do is you could get corporate interest out of real estate completely, all right? So no company should be able to buy a home or set a limit on it, 1 or 2 properties maybe per company. Get these huge mega companies out of real estate. What they're doing is they're keeping the cost of homes high by bidding up the price of homes and outbidding people that want someplace to live. And when they buy the homes, they typically increase rent way above what would be like what would be a reasonable profit, because being companies they're going to try to get as much money as possible. It's about the bottom line. It's about their stock price. Right, so we've got to get big business out of housing. Now, yes, there's always going to be some business in housing because you have the builders, you have a lot of other things associated with housing, but those are just a couple things you can do immediately to help fix the underlying issue. But guess what? It's probably never going to happen. Or I should correct myself. Maybe after a crisis where we plunge into an economic situation like some of these other countries, maybe then that will finally start being looked at by some people. All right, on to some other news, though, but still on the topic of housing. Goldman Sachs is out there predicting a crash in several U.S. cities. And I'm not sure if you're going to believe him or not, but Goldman Sachs is giving us the cities most likely to crash here coming up here in the near future. A 2008 type of crash is what they're predicting. And let me make myself really small up here in the upper corner so you can see here the map. This is, again, per Goldman Sachs, what Goldman Sachs thinks is going to happen. The darker red is going to be the biggest drop. All the way to the worst far left here is going to be a negative 10% drop. And I think it's going to be much worse than that in some cities, and maybe even this year. I mean, we've already seen a 10% drop close to it here in San Diego, and many other cities are seeing close to that 10% drop already. So what makes Goldman Sachs think that it's going to be only 10% again this year? All right, well, let's take a look at the cities here. The darker red, we see San Diego, Phoenix, Austin, Texas, Dallas, Denver, Seattle, Portland, up in Boston. DC, not quite dark. Looks like maybe 5% is what they're predicting for DC. Charlotte, North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, Tampa, Florida. And I think they really didn't go into many of the smaller cities. Like, I think Boise, Idaho should be on there, but it looks like they just focused on the major cities as far as price predictions here. Factoring in all the economic turmoil, again, with the layoffs, the cost of living, these enormous debt levels in a high interest rate environment, it's gonna crush a lot of middle class households. We're yet to see the car repossession tsunami really hit. I think that's gonna really pick up speed this year in 2023. And I did predict an eviction tsunami, but with this national rent package coming out here, this rent protection, we'll see what happens. It may not happen. There may be endless protections, and it's going to be completely, controlled. And we see usually we see Big Brother come in with bigger and bigger hands of control during times of economic turmoil or economic crisis. Just look back to 2008 and the bailouts. Were the banks that loaned out all the money they shouldn't have loaned out, and people couldn't pay it back. And did they suffer any consequences? No, they got bailed out, and now banks have grown even larger, even a lot larger since that time, 2008 financial crisis, aka the era of the bailouts. All right, still on the topic of housing. Well, some states lost people because the cost of living and other reasons, but the cost of living, the cost of housing being a big part of it. Texas and Florida see big population gains. New York and California see declines. And it's going to get even worse here in California. They're going to be introducing this wealth tax, which is another 1.5% tax on the ultra wealthy, is what they're saying. And I think it's going to be like Joe Rogan and some other people that went ahead and just left the state. Other businesses left the state here and set up shop, in lower cost states. And ultimately, it's going to come back on the tax against the middle class people here in California and New York. I think the same thing is going to happen. Right, but Bulls and Bears, the manipulation that we're seeing now, if this were to end, you would see a market collapse overnight. We would wake up, and when all this manipulation is done, when you wake up, the entire banking system could be gone because there's so much leverage, there's so much debt out there, there's derivatives in amounts that even economists that have been following the markets and following finance for decades, they can't figure it out. What they do know is that it's so much. What they're just saying is that it's in the quadrillions. It's numbers so large, it's unimaginable the amount of leverage out there with derivatives and all of the swapping from interbank lending, naked short selling, leverage upon leverage. It's just a complete, manipulated, phony economy and monetary system right now. FDIC has been talking about a big announcement that they're going to have to tell the people. We talked about that a few reports ago, but I have to keep reminding people that. So something big is still boiling under the surface here and going on behind the scenes that we don't know exactly if some big black swan situation is going to pop up. It could be something that comes up where they could say, well, the system got hacked or the system went dark. Somebody attacked us, maybe another country, a country that's mad at the United States right now with all the things happening in the world right now, the war over in Europe. Also, it could just be war coming to the shores of the United States. But so far, it looks like a lot of the countries are just fighting back financially by going outside of the dollar. We've got all these different nations now trading outside of the dollar, including Saudi Arabia with oil trade not in the dollar, outside of the dollar. Saudi Arabia now being the number one producer of oil. So that's something big to watch. And that's something that could also put the death blow, to the dollar, or at least push the dollar down. We do see the dollar now is on the decline again after showing some strength over the past year. But we're going to keep an eye on it here for you. Thanks everybody for watching. We really appreciate you being here. And like to hear from you down in comments. Top-down nationwide rent control is going to fix the problem or make things worse. Like to see you down in the comments on there. Thanks everybody for watching. Big love. Keep stacking. Bye for now and peace.